Today's entitled Women's Search for Attention and Validation leads them onto Highway 304, the Cheater's Highway. My name is John Brown, and I am the proud owner of an electrical contracting business for the past 15 years. Our usual workday is from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. We start early to avoid summer heat and afternoon rush hour traffic. Today, I had my crew work over to 5 p.m. to finish a one house. It is the last of the 4 homes that I contracted to wire. My crew has left for the day. I am taking a final walk through. After noting that everything is finished, I am finally able to leave for the day and the end of a very exhausting week. Now I can get through a final inspection. As I exit the house, the full blast of the afternoon heat hits me. I start the more than 100-yard walk to my truck. My shirt becomes soaked with sweat. I've got to get the AC fixed in this truck. In an attempt to take my mind off the heat, I begin to think of the weekend ahead with my wife. I stop by the office, and I finish the usual never-ending paperwork on this last house. The air conditioning leaves little relief from the oppressive heat outside. I finally sign the last of the forms for completing the electrical work, then put the whole stack in a folder for the general contractor. I release a sigh of relief. For when this house passes, I will be able to receive the final payment for this house. My crew and I can now enjoy a well-earned weekend off, and I can put this truck in the shop to fix the AC. On Monday, we will start rough-in wiring on the first 3 houses of the first phase for this subdivision. The drywall crews are chomping the bit to get started, so painting can do their jobs. Then, we will return to install all fixtures and lights when their jobs are finished. In the meantime, we, in turn, will begin to start on any homes that have the framing complete and the roof is on. Thanks to my crew's work ethic, we are currently a week ahead of schedule. I have 4 employees. My foreman Jim and Bob are my licensed electricians, and Michael and Lewis are my helpers. Lewis is a master with the ditch witch. He can have the ditch dug, pipe glued and in the ground to the outside panel and meter box and ready for wire before lunchtime. Michael will have the home runs started for each circuit to the inside panels during that time. Then Lewis will assist with any remaining circuits. They will have all circuits completed by the end of the second day. Bob will have the inside panels wired and labeled by the end of the second day. Jim and I will do the interior wiring. Together, we will have a house done in 4 or 5 days. Providing the framing crews are doing their job, we will be ahead of schedule. That makes the general contractor very happy, so he will likely choose me first for any new jobs, making my bank account very happy. As I step out of the office, the only thing on my mind now is to get home, take a nice cool shower, and have my first weekend beer. I burn my hand when I grab the door handle of my truck. A few words you are not to say in the presence of a lady spew from my mouth. The oven quality heat hits me in the face after opening the door. I open all of the windows. After sitting behind the wheel, the very bright sun caused me to shield my eyes. I start the truck, and the radio begins to play. The time is 6 p.m. The temperature is 102 on this hot and sweaty Friday afternoon. The DJ announces. "You got that right," I grumbled back. As I deal with the evening traffic, the hot air blows through the open windows. That's thanks to the fact that the AC died last week. I have not had the time to take the truck in to be fixed since I have been working 6 days a week for the past 2 months. At 6:55 p.m., I pull into my driveway. Walking through the garage, I take a seat in the mudroom and remove my work boots before entering the house. As I put my work backpack in the office, I hear my wife upstairs. 15 years ago, I started working for a family friend as his electrical helper when I was 16. I figured to start sort of at the beginning. This was during the summer between my sophomore and junior years in high school. I worked during the following summer as well. That was between my junior and senior year. When I graduated, he hired me full-time. He put me through an apprentice program to become an electrician. Thanks to working for him over the summers, I completed it in 18 months. As soon as I graduated from that, I started to study for the Master Electrician exam. With his help, I passed that exam just after I turned 20. I worked for him until I turned 23. He started talking about possibly then retiring, so I figured I would just start my own company. It took about a year to gain any real traction. I took any job that I could get. Then fate stepped in. My mentor needed help doing electrical contract work on a small subdivision. And the rest is history. 13 years ago, I had met Marcy, and we began to date. At that time in my life, she was everything that I wanted in a woman. She had this girl next door cuteness that was so sexy. She was tiny but with this curvy body. Marcy and I had been exclusive and dating for the last 12 months. It was time that I told my dad what was on my mind. I took a deep breath. "Dad, I am going to ask Marcy to marry me," I said confidently. "Son, I am very proud of you." I noticed that his eyes were misty. "You are entering into a crucial stage in your life. But you are entering a hazardous time as well." "What do you mean hazardous?" I was a little confused. "From the time you were a teenager, you worked hard to get to where you are today. You did that by yourself." He paused to give me time to reflect. "You are getting ready to bring another person into that life." Again a pause. "Hopefully, for life. Your mother and I care for her as if she is our daughter. But, you must protect yourself with a prenup." "You mean in case Marcy cheats on me?" "I don't think that she will, Dad. She loves me," I protested. "I know that, son, but it is a 50-50 split in this state in a divorce," he stated emphatically. "Do you want her to get half of everything you worked so hard to obtain?" That hit me. You, in all likelihood, would need to sell the business. So, what do I do? I asked. "Monday, we will go to Mr. Patterson's office and have him draw up the prenup. Also, at the same time, I will sign over the deed to your grandma's old house to you alone." I was shocked. "I need to do this so that it is part of what you bring into the marriage. Thus covered by the prenup." "What about Bubba?" I asked. "Doesn't he want it?" "Your brother has already told me that he does not want it," Dad explained. Mom and Marcy came back outside. "What are you two talking about?" my mom asked. "Just having a father-son bonding moment," Dad said. We toasted each other by tapping our beer bottles together. My thoughts returned to the present. When I returned to my house that evening, I called my foreman Jim and told him to run the crew Monday. I told him that I had an appointment with the family attorney that morning and would not be on site. Monday, I sat next to my dad in front of the attorney. He already had a prenup drawn up and ready for signature. He handled all of my company business, so obtaining the information was easy. Dad had the deed to the cabin, so we both signed the transfer over to me. I signed the prenup, and the signatures were notarized. Mr. Patterson took all the documents to have them recorded with the county clerk. Dad and I thanked Mr. Patterson. After meeting with the attorney, found Dad and I driving up to the cabin. Signed copies of the prenup and deed in my hands. We walked through the cabin with a critical eye for what needed repairing and renovations. That evening we were returning home. My notepad had over 10 pages of notes and measurements. I called my supplier and ordered the initial supplies to rewire the cabin. Then went to the GC and arranged to have my crew take a week off when those supplies arrived, since we were ahead of schedule. The plan was to have the remodeling completed in time for the wedding, and use it for our honeymoon. That plan fell through. My great-grandfather originally built the small 2-room cabin in the early 1910s. The cabin was used during hunting season. He had purchased 160 acres of a 960-acre farm. The property could not be farmed due to the fact that it was too hilly and rocky. On Labor Day of that year, I proposed and Marcy accepted. She wanted a June wedding, so she went into wedding planning mode immediately. It was a small wedding with the reception in my parents' backyard. With the cabin uncompleted, I took my bride to Aruba for a week. I spent the next 5 years in wedded bliss. I didn't know what loomed ahead. Back to reality. "Marcy, I'm home," I called out as I climbed the stairs. When I entered the bedroom, I could see Mary putting on her makeup. She is wearing one of those short black LBD dresses. She is also wearing a pair of 4-inch stiletto heels, which I have never seen. are we supposed to go out tonight? I asked. No, she says with a bit of sarcasm as she turns her attention back to the mirror. Then, where are you going? I asked. I was getting angry. Janie and I are going to a bridal shower. Her annoyance more apparent with my questioning. That must be some bridal shower, I said sarcastically. Staring into my wife's eyes, I said, well, I don't know what you have been doing for the past 3 months when y'all go out, so has been worth it. I began to change my clothes. What are you really doing? She looked downward. Just remember our talk about infidelity, I stated forcefully. It's one and done. When I finished my shower, she was gone. I dressed and headed out to eat. I called my brother while driving and told him to meet me at our favorite diner. I told him that it was non-negotiable. After taking a bite out of my burger, I asked him how long he had known about Marcy's cheating. What? He said as he was choking down that bite. Why do you think that? Well, for one, you don't go to a bridal shower wearing an LBD. Along with 4 inches heels and makeup as if you were going out on a date. I explained. And 2, you're a lousy liar. I swear to you, bro, I have absolutely no idea. My brother held his right hand up. Let's finish eating, then go back to my place and figure this out. Bubba may say that he doesn't know, but I'm sure that his wife knows, so by default, he knows. Marcy stepped away from Mark. After giving him a warm, passionate kiss hello, she told him of what occurred prior to leaving. Mark, I believe that my husband suspects our affair, she said nervously. Don't worry, babe, we will just have you file for divorce and take everything that he owns. Mark smiled. I'm not so sure, she worried. I did sign a prenup. Don't worry. My lawyer will destroy that in court, Mark stated with superiority. I hope so, Marcy not so sure. Why don't you come off of the pill? During the next month, you give the hubby some sex, then afterwards just deny him, and I will put a baby in you afterwards. Boom, we nail him for child support. He smiled sarcastically. After we had both pulled into his driveway, I stopped Bubba before going into the house. Hey listen, I said. I have a better idea. I won't confront her yet. What do you have in mind? Bob asked. I will call Mr. Patterson and start the paperwork on the divorce. I said. I will see if he can have someone follow her to get solid proof of her cheating. I will give her enough rope to hang herself. With that said, the brothers hugged and John left to go home. As soon as I fastened my seatbelt, I hit speed dial on my phone for Mr. Patterson. The following 20 minutes, I explained what the problem is and Mr. Patterson said he would have his divorce associate start the paperwork and contact someone to shadow my wayward wife. 2 weeks later, as Marcy sat at her desk, a distinguished gentleman approached her. She looked up from her computer and asked if she could help him. Are you Marcy Brown? He asked. Yes, I am. You have been served, he said, handing her the thick packet, complete with photos of her infidelity. She took it with trembling hands. Your husband said to tell you that he hoped that you enjoyed that bridal shower. Smiling, he turned and walked out of the bank. Marcy just sat at her desk and cried. When she returned home that evening, she couldn't park her car in the garage. She found all of her clothes and toiletries packed, boxed, and stacked on her side of the garage. As she tried to enter the house, she found that her keys did not work. She panicked as she tried to get the door to open. She pounded on the door. I sat in the dark as I listened to my phone buzz. I assumed that she went to her lover's place, as I heard her car drive away. 3 weeks later, Mark was enjoying the night at the bar dancing with a new woman. As a regular at the bar, Mark had not seen her before. She was alone, and he was alone. As they danced, snuggled together, on the dance floor, she looked up and asked the question that Mark did not want to really answer. Where is that other woman that I seen you with around town? She asked with a knowing smirk. He hesitated briefly, then with a nervous chuckle. She was married and her husband served her with divorce papers. Kinda takes the fun out of it. Good for me. I've heard stories about you. Does your big friend down there still magical? she said while pressing harder against his crotch. Tell you what, why don't we go out back for some fresh air? Holding her hand, they walk off of the dance floor. She walked through the back door first. Mark was a few feet behind. His interest was watching her ass sway and thinking of how much fun it would be to show her his magic. As he passed the doorway, a blur covered his eyesight and he saw a brilliant light. His head erupted into extreme pain. He staggered, but he was prevented from hitting the ground by a pair of very large hands grabbing him. He was thrown onto his back. His legs kicked with spasms. In a painful fog, Mark felt his pants being removed. Someone grabbed and twisted his genitals in a direction that they were not supposed to go. The cold of a steel wire was wrapped around his package and pulled so tight that it cut off any circulation. A banding clip locked in place. The pain in his head lessened, to be replaced with the excruciating pain of having his balls banded. His date placed her mouth very close to Mark's ear. "You messed with the wrong wife," she said menacingly. "Her husband is important to us." Mark was beaten severely. He lost consciousness. He was dumped in the landfill with the rest of the garbage, and covered under a large pile of garbage. His body was never found. At the meeting in Judge's chambers, John and Marcy signed the divorce papers. Marcy tried to talk to John, but he just held his hand up and left everything unsaid. There was nothing that she could say that would justify her actions. Marcy was allowed to remain in the house until she either found another place to live or the divorce was final. Whichever came first. In either case, John was going to sell the house. He had already moved all of his belongings up to the cabin. The prenup allowed the divorce to go through smoothly. It was finalized in the minimal time of 90 days. Now, John had to try to resume his life post Marcy. The hard part was when he had to go over to his brother's house and try hard not to blow up at his sister-in-law, who obviously knew about Marcy's activities. Today, I sit on the front porch holding a steaming cup of joe. I rock slowly as I look down across the valley. In the quiet of the morning, I reflect on the last 6 years. In the first year, I focused my anger into finally renovating the cabin. From the outside, it was rustic, while the interior was modern. It was so perfect that I moved here. I left the old place to Marcy. I knew that I would never get my half if it ever sells. I knew that her bank job didn't pay enough for her to live on her own. Even with the prenup, the judge gave me 5 years of spousal support. It wasn't a lot of money, but it protected my business. The support ran out last year. She isn't smart enough to get a different job, transfer to another city, or even work harder so she can increase her income. Her branch is locked into her position because of our divorce stigma. She'll never get promoted at her branch. I was pleased that we didn't have kids together. I'm guessing that in year 3, some antibiotics messed with her birth control, and Marcy found herself pregnant. So she got to start year 4 with baby boy. I was ambushed by Marcy a few months ago. I was working late in the small office that I rent working on our quarterly reports when I heard a knock on the front door. Checking my watch, I was surprised that anyone was stopping by here at this time of the evening. I peeked through the blinds, and I saw her standing outside with a baby on her hip. His nose running down his cheeks. The night air was cold, so I invited her in. "Well, Marcy, what can I do for you?" I asked. She tried a smile. "I was in the area, and I saw your truck, so I thought I'd see how you're getting along." "Okay," I said as I looked at her. "I guess pregnancy in your late 30s isn't easy on a woman, as it is in your 20s. She used to be tiny, but now, she was just curvy. The extra weight from being pregnant rested on torso. Her tiny waist was gone forever. Her face looked so tired. I motioned to a rolling desk chair. "You look tired, so sit down, and tell me what you really want." John knew what she wanted. She paused, started to speak, then stopped to put the baby onto the floor. "I was thinking about us, and how good we used to be. I thought, maybe, we could." John stopped her. "No." He sat down on the edge of his desk. "That ship has sailed. I would never take you back to be your babysitter so you can cheat on me again. Nope, that's not happening. He pointed to the door. Marcy, I think you need to leave, but I just got here. She started her fake crying. He took her left hand and pulled her into a standing position, then picked up the child and placed him in his mother's arms before leading them to the door. John, please. She shook in the cold. He looked firmly at her. Sorry, but I won't be father to another man's child. Marcy tried to reach out to touch John. But my son needs a father. He placed his hand on the door. He has one. I'd suggest finding him to take care of his child. If you know who he is. John closed the door.